Imagine spending your life believing that kindness is the key to happiness, success, and strong relationships, only to discover that unchecked kindness can lead to betrayal, manipulation, and even destruction. What if I told you that some of the greatest tragedies in history were not caused by cruelty, but by excessive kindness? That people who were too good, too forgiving, and too generous often met the worst fates. Niccolò Machiavelli, a thinker whose name is often associated with cunning and ruthless politics, offers insights into human nature that go far beyond mere strategy. His writings expose a truth that many choose to ignore. Kindness, when not tempered with wisdom and strength, can be a dangerous weakness. But what if I told you that hidden within his words are powerful lessons on how to be both kind and strong, generous and wise? Today we will explore these ideas and uncover why kindness, if not used correctly, can be more harmful than helpful. Stay with me until the end, because the final lesson will completely change how you view kindness, power, and human nature itself. Let's begin. Since childhood, we are taught that kindness is always the right path. Be generous, be forgiving, put others before yourself. These ideas are drilled into us as the foundation of morality and goodness. And indeed, kindness has the power to heal, unite, and create deep connections. But there's another side to this story, one that is rarely discussed. What happens when kindness is exploited? What happens when being good makes you a target? Machiavelli addresses this dilemma in The Prince, where he poses one of the most provocative questions in history. Is it better to be loved or feared? Most people instinctively respond, loved, of course. But Machiavelli warns that love is fleeting and unreliable. People love based on convenience, on what you provide for them, and on how they feel at any given moment. The same people who love you today may turn against you tomorrow if circumstances change. Fear, however, is more stable. It ensures respect, maintains order, and prevents betrayal. But does this mean that kindness should be abandoned? Absolutely not. Machiavelli does not argue against kindness itself. He argues against blind kindness. Being good without understanding power dynamics is like walking unarmed into a battlefield. The world does not always reward goodness. In fact, it often punishes those who are too generous, too forgiving, or too trusting. History is full of examples of leaders and individuals who suffered because they placed too much faith in kindness. Look at Marcus Aurelius, one of the greatest philosopher-emperors of Rome. A man of wisdom, virtue, and compassion, he ruled with justice and sought to be fair in all things. But his greatest mistake was his kindness towards his own son, Commodus. Instead of preparing him to be a strong and disciplined leader, Aurelius indulged him, believing that love and patience would shape him into a good ruler. The result? Commodus became one of Rome's worst emperors, corrupt and reckless, leading the empire into chaos. The kindness of Marcus Aurelius, meant to build a better future, ultimately contributed to Rome's decline. This pattern is not limited to history. It happens in everyday life. Have you ever been too kind to someone, only to realize they took advantage of you? Have you ever forgiven someone repeatedly, hoping they would change, only to be hurt again? Have you ever helped someone, only to see them expect more and more, without gratitude? The truth is, kindness without limits breeds entitlement. When people receive without effort, they stop valuing what is given. Worse, when you finally decide to set boundaries, they react as if you have done something wrong. This is why Machiavelli warns against relying solely on goodness. The world is not structured to reward those who give, without expecting anything in return. If you do not set limits, if you do not balance kindness with strength, you will be used and discarded. But here's the important question. Does this mean you should become cold, calculating, and ruthless? No. The solution is not to abandon kindness, but to apply it with intelligence. Machiavelli was not against morality. He was against naivety. His lessons teach us that kindness must be paired with strategic thinking. It must be given wisely to those who will not exploit it. This brings us to a crucial realization. True kindness is not about always saying yes. It is about knowing when to say yes and when to say no. It is about helping without allowing yourself to be drained. It is about generosity that does not lead to self-destruction. Now, take a moment to reflect. Have there been times in your life when your kindness led to unexpected harm? Have you ever felt that your good intentions were mistaken for weakness? In the next part, we will explore why people instinctively take advantage of kindness and how psychological mechanisms drive this behavior. More importantly, we will discuss how you can protect yourself while still being a good person. Because the truth is, kindness and power are not opposites. They are meant to work together. Think about a time when you showed kindness to someone, expecting nothing in return, only to be met with indifference, or worse, betrayal. Why does this happen? Why do people often take advantage of kindness instead of appreciating it? The answer lies deep within human psychology, in instincts and social behaviors that have existed for centuries. To understand this, we need to explore a fundamental truth. Human beings, by nature, respond to incentives. Whether consciously or unconsciously, people are always assessing their environment, determining what benefits them and what does not. When kindness is given freely, without limits, it can create an illusion of infinite supply. People stop seeing it as something valuable and begin to take it for granted. This psychological phenomenon is known as the law of diminishing returns. In simple terms, the more we receive something without effort, the less we appreciate it. This is why people often value what is difficult to obtain. Scarcity creates desire, and excess creates indifference. Machiavelli understood this well, which is why he advised leaders to be careful about how and when they show generosity. A ruler who is too generous, he warned, would quickly exhaust his resources and lose respect. This applies not only to rulers, but to everyone. If you are constantly giving, whether it is your time, your effort, or your kindness, without setting boundaries, people will begin to expect it. What once seemed like an act of goodwill becomes the bare minimum in their eyes. And when you finally stop, they feel as if something is being taken away from them, even though it was never theirs to demand. Think about friendships where one person always gives more than the other. At first, the generosity is welcomed, but over time, the other person starts to expect it. They stop appreciating the effort because it has become routine. And when the giver finally says no, they are often met with anger, guilt-tripping, or accusations of being selfish. This is not because the person was intentionally cruel. It is simply how human nature works when kindness is not balanced with self-respect. Machiavelli's wisdom teaches us that to be truly effective in life, we must combine kindness with strategy. This means recognizing when kindness is strengthening a relationship and when it is weakening it. It means understanding that generosity should be given to those who appreciate it, not to those who exploit it. A powerful example of this is seen in leadership. Many great leaders throughout history started with good intentions, believing that fairness and generosity would ensure loyalty. Yet, history is filled with stories of rulers who were betrayed by the very people they tried to help. Take Louis XVI of France, a king who wanted to be loved by his people. He sought to rule with compassion, avoiding conflict and making concessions. But in doing so, he projected weakness. Instead of securing loyalty, his kindness made him an easy target. The same crowds that once cheered for him later called for his execution. His failure was not his kindness, it was his inability to balance kindness with the strength necessary to maintain control. So what is the solution? Should we abandon kindness altogether? Of course not, but we must redefine what kindness truly is. Real kindness is not just about being agreeable, generous, or forgiving. It is about knowing when to give and when to withhold. It is about recognizing who deserves your kindness and who only seeks to take advantage of it. This is why boundaries are essential. Boundaries do not mean you stop being kind. They mean you ensure your kindness is respected. When you set limits, you teach others that your kindness is valuable, not something to be used without thought. And here is something crucial to understand. The people who truly care about you will respect your boundaries. The ones who get angry or try to manipulate you were never interested in your well-being. They were interested in what they could get from you. Now I want you to reflect on this. Have there been moments when you felt that setting boundaries was difficult because you feared being seen as unkind? Have you ever hesitated to say no, even when you knew you should? In the next part, we will explore how to apply Machiavelli's wisdom in modern life, how to be both kind and powerful, compassionate yet respected. We will uncover strategies to ensure that your kindness is a strength, not a weakness, and that those around you appreciate rather than exploit it. Because the truth is, kindness is not about being liked by everyone. It is about being valued by the right people. Many people struggle with the idea that kindness and power can coexist. We are often led to believe that being kind means being passive, that showing compassion means allowing others to take advantage of us. But what if true kindness is not about weakness at all? What if the most effective form of kindness is one that is paired with strength? Machiavelli understood this dynamic well. In The Prince, he warns against being overly generous, stating that a ruler who is too giving will soon exhaust his resources and become despised. But does this mean that generosity should be abandoned? No. What Machiavelli suggests is strategic kindness, a form of generosity that is intentional, measured, and given only when it serves a greater purpose. This concept does not apply only to rulers. It is a fundamental principle for anyone who wants to navigate life wisely. To apply this wisdom in daily life, we must first redefine kindness. Kindness is not just about being agreeable or self-sacrificing. It is about knowing when to give and when to withhold, when to trust and when to be cautious. The most powerful individuals are those who understand the balance between benevolence and self-preservation. A prime example of this balance can be seen in business. Leaders who are too lenient often find their generosity exploited. They give second chances repeatedly, allow poor behavior to go unchecked, and hesitate to make difficult decisions out of a desire to be liked. But effective leaders understand that being respected is more important than being liked. They show kindness when it is deserved, but are firm when necessary. This is not cruelty, it is wisdom. Consider the difference between two managers. One is overly generous, always giving employees extra chances, allowing missed deadlines, and avoiding conflict to maintain harmony. The other is fair but firm, rewarding excellence while holding people accountable. Over time, the first manager loses authority, as employees realize there are no consequences for underperformance. The second manager, however, earns respect. Employees may not always like them, but they trust their leadership and value their fairness. This is Machiavellian wisdom in action, not the absence of kindness, but the presence of discipline alongside it. This principle applies not just in leadership, but in personal relationships as well. Many people find themselves in toxic friendships or one-sided relationships where they are constantly giving but receiving little in return. They believe that if they just give more time, more effort, more understanding, the other person will eventually reciprocate. But this is rarely the case. When kindness is given without limits, it is often mistaken for weakness. The key to avoiding this trap is learning to say no. This is one of the hardest lessons for naturally kind people to accept. Saying no feels like rejection, like letting someone down. But in reality, saying no is an act of self-respect. It establishes boundaries and communicates that your kindness is valuable. Those who truly respect you will honor those boundaries. Those who do not will reveal their true intentions. Machiavelli's teachings remind us that in a world where human nature is complex and often self-serving, we must protect ourselves. This does not mean becoming cold or unfeeling. It means being strategic with our kindness. It means recognizing when to offer generosity and when to withhold it. But there is one final lesson, the most powerful of all, one that could change how you approach kindness forever. In the next part, we will discuss why the most respected and influential individuals are not those who are simply kind, but those who are kind with wisdom. We will explore the secret to earning both loyalty and respect, how to be compassionate without being exploited, and how to lead with both heart and intelligence. Because the ultimate truth is this: kindness alone is not enough. It must be wielded with intention, or it will be wasted. If there is one lesson that ties everything together, it is this: kindness is most powerful when it is a choice, not an obligation. The moment kindness is expected rather than appreciated, it loses its value. And the moment you feel forced to be kind, even at your own expense, you are no longer being kind, you are being controlled. Machiavelli's wisdom teaches us that true power comes from understanding human nature. And human nature is not as idealistic as we often wish it to be. People respond to incentives, to boundaries, and to perceived strength. If you allow kindness to be mistaken for weakness, you invite exploitation. But if your kindness comes with clear expectations, with the ability to say no, and with the strength to act when necessary, it becomes a force that commands respect. This is why the most influential people in history were not those who gave endlessly, but those who gave strategically. They understood when to be generous and when to be firm, when to forgive and when to walk away. They did not let their kindness become a liability. Instead, they used it as a tool for building meaningful connections, ones based on mutual respect rather than blind generosity. Think about figures like Nelson Mandela. He was known for his incredible compassion, yet he was not passive. He did not allow his kindness to be manipulated. He extended forgiveness to those who had once oppressed him, but only after ensuring that justice and accountability were established. His kindness had strength behind it, and that is what made it powerful. On the other hand, history is filled with examples of individuals who were too kind for their own good, who trusted too easily, forgave too often, and sacrificed too much, only to be left with nothing in return. These stories serve as warnings, reminders that kindness without awareness can be dangerous. So how can we apply this in our own lives? The answer is simple but profound. Treat kindness as a privilege, not as a duty. Give it to those who earn it, not to those who expect it. Be generous but not at the cost of your own well-being. Set boundaries, and do not be afraid to enforce them. Learn to say no without guilt. Understand that sometimes the most compassionate thing you can do is to walk away from those who refuse to respect you. This is the balance Machiavelli speaks of. He does not tell us to be unkind. He tells us to be wise. He does not ask us to be feared at all costs. He simply warns us that love without strength is fleeting. The key is to master both. Now take a moment to reflect. How have you been approaching kindness in your life? Have you been giving it away too easily? Have you allowed it to be mistaken for weakness? Or have you learned to wield it with wisdom, ensuring that your kindness is both appreciated and respected? The truth is, the world does not reward those who are simply kind. It rewards those who know how to be kind and strong. It honors those who understand that generosity must be backed by self-respect. It values those who recognize that true kindness is not about pleasing everyone. It is about offering compassion where it is deserved and standing firm where it is not. So, as you move forward, remember this: kindness is not about avoiding conflict. It is not about making yourself smaller to keep others comfortable. It is not about endlessly giving while receiving nothing in return. True kindness, the kind that earns respect, builds strong relationships, and creates lasting impact, is the kind that is given with both heart and wisdom. And that is the dark side of kindness. It is not that kindness is wrong or dangerous. It is that when it is not paired with strength, it becomes powerless. But when you learn to balance kindness with intelligence, with self-respect, and with the ability to stand your ground, you do not just become a kind person, you become an influential one. A person whose kindness carries weight, a person whose generosity is never mistaken for weakness, a person who is not just loved, but respected. Thanks for looking. Have you ever wondered what it takes for a good person, someone kind, compassionate, and ethical, to commit acts of cruelty or even become a monster? Imagine someone you admire, someone you trust, transforming into someone you barely recognize. What if I told you that this isn't just a rare anomaly, but a pattern seen across history and human behavior? Today, we are delving into one of the most provocative and unsettling questions about human nature. Why do good people sometimes do bad things? By the end of this video, you'll uncover the shocking mechanisms that push ordinary individuals into darkness. More importantly, we will uncover how to recognize and resist these forces, with the last insight being the most critical and empowering of them all. This journey takes us deep into the psychological experiments, historical events, and philosophical reflections that expose the thin line separating good from evil. This is not just a story of others. It's a mirror that forces us to look inward and ask, what would I do in their place? Could I too be swayed by these forces? Stay with me, because what you'll discover today could fundamentally change the way you see the world and yourself. The Lucifer effect is a concept popularized by the psychologist Philip Zimbardo, who conducted the infamous Stanford prison experiment. What he revealed was profoundly unsettling. The environment we are placed in, the roles we adopt, and the authority we obey can twist even the most virtuous individuals into perpetrators of harm. Think about it. History is filled with examples of ordinary people who committed extraordinary atrocities. The guards in Nazi concentration camps, the soldiers who carried out ethnic cleansing, or even the bystanders who stood silent as horrors unfolded. All of these individuals were not born evil. They were, in many cases, regular people swept up in circumstances that unleashed the darkest parts of human nature. Why does this happen? The answer lies in a combination of psychological and social forces that shape behavior. First, there is the power of authority. Psychologist Stanley Milgram's obedience experiments in the 1960s showed that people would go to extreme lengths, even inflicting pain on others, when instructed by an authority figure. In his study, participants were asked to deliver electric shocks to another person, who was actually an actor pretending to feel pain. Shockingly, most participants continued administering shocks, even when they believed they were causing severe harm, simply because they were told to do so. Now think about your own life. How often do we follow instructions without questioning them, whether it's from a boss, a leader, or even societal norms? What would you do if someone in a position of power asked you to compromise your morals for the greater good? Another critical factor is the concept of dehumanization. When we strip others of their humanity, labeling them as the enemy, subhuman, or less than, it becomes easier to justify acts of cruelty. This is a tactic used time and again in propaganda, war, and even everyday conflicts. It's easier to harm someone when you no longer see them as a person. Consider the language we use today in social and political discourse. How often do we see groups of people reduced to labels or stereotypes? Reflect on how this diminishes our empathy and connection, creating an us versus them mentality. But dehumanization is only part of the puzzle. Social roles and group dynamics also play a significant role. Zimbardo's Stanford prison experiment vividly demonstrated this. College students were randomly assigned to be either guards or prisoners in a simulated prison environment. Within days, the guards began to exhibit abusive behavior, and the prisoners showed signs of extreme stress and submission. What was shocking was how quickly the participants lost sight of their individuality and conformed to the roles they were given. This raises a critical question. How much of our identity is shaped by the roles society imposes on us? Are we truly free to act as individuals, or are we subconsciously playing parts dictated by the systems around us? These forces, authority, dehumanization, and group dynamics, are not theoretical. They are active in our daily lives, influencing the way we think, act, and perceive others. We see them in workplaces, schools, social media, and even within families. Recognizing these forces is the first step in resisting them. But what about the tipping point? The exact moment when a good person crosses the line. That moment is often subtle. It begins with small compromises, a decision to stay silent when witnessing injustice, an agreement to follow along just this once. Over time, these small choices accumulate, creating a slippery slope that can lead to profound moral failure. Pause for a moment and think, have you ever made a choice that went against your values because it felt easier or safer? What were the consequences? As we move forward, we'll explore how to recognize these moments before they spiral out of control. More importantly, we'll uncover how to foster resilience against these psychological forces. But first, let's confront an even deeper question. Are some people immune to the Lucifer effect? Or is it a danger we all face? Stay tuned, because what comes next will challenge everything you think you know about yourself and human nature. Let's now confront the question that lingers in the minds of many. Are some people truly immune to the Lucifer effect? The answer, as uncomfortable as it may be, is that none of us are entirely immune. Psychologists have long debated the role of personality in resisting corruption and moral collapse. While certain traits, such as strong empathy, self-awareness, and moral courage, may act as protective factors, the truth is that under the right, or perhaps the wrong circumstances, anyone can fall prey to these forces. Think of it this way. We all carry within us the capacity for both great good and unspeakable harm. This duality is a recurring theme in literature, religion, and philosophy. Carl Jung, the renowned Swiss psychiatrist, described this as the shadow aspect of our psyche, the darker, often repressed parts of ourselves that we are reluctant to acknowledge. Jung believed that to fully understand ourselves, we must confront this shadow and integrate it into our conscious awareness. Have you ever felt a surge of anger or envy so intense that it surprised even you? Have you ever said or done something in the heat of the moment that you later regretted deeply? These are glimpses of the shadow at work. Left unchecked, this shadow can grow and manifest in ways that align with the Lucifer effect. But here's the hopeful part. Awareness is our greatest defense. By understanding the psychological mechanisms that lead to moral collapse, we gain the power to resist them. So let's delve deeper into how these forces operate in the real world and how we can counteract them. One of the most insidious mechanisms is something psychologists call moral disengagement. This concept, introduced by psychologist Albert Bandura, explains how individuals rationalize harmful behavior to avoid feeling guilt or remorse. For example, someone might convince themselves that everyone else is doing it, or that the ends justify the means. These rationalizations create a psychological distance between the individual and their actions, making it easier to justify wrongdoing. Consider how this plays out in everyday scenarios. A student might cheat on an exam, telling themselves it's just a one-time thing. A manager might treat employees unfairly, believing it's necessary to meet company goals. In these moments, moral disengagement allows people to act in ways that contradict their values. The antidote to this is what some psychologists refer to as moral vigilance. This involves actively questioning our actions and their consequences, even when it's uncomfortable. It means asking ourselves, am I justifying something that deep down I know is wrong? Another powerful tool is the cultivation of empathy. Empathy acts as a counterbalance to dehumanization. When we truly see others as complex, feeling individuals, people with hopes, fears, and dreams, it becomes much harder to harm them. This is why storytelling, art, and genuine human connection are so vital. They remind us of our shared humanity and break down the barriers that divide us. But what about the societal level? How do we address the larger systems and structures that perpetuate harm and enable the Lucifer effect on a grand scale? This is where the role of leadership and collective responsibility becomes crucial. History has shown us that charismatic leaders can either uplift or corrupt entire societies. Adolf Hitler, for example, manipulated fear and prejudice to justify atrocities. On the other hand, leaders like Mahatma Gandhi and Martin Luther King Jr. used their influence to inspire positive change and resistance against injustice. This brings us to a pivotal question: what kind of leader do we choose to follow, and what kind of influence do we exert on others? Even if we're not in positions of traditional authority, we all have influence, within our families, communities, and workplaces. The question is whether we use that influence to promote compassion and fairness or to perpetuate harm and division. Reflect for a moment on your own life. Who are the people you look up to? What values do they embody? And equally important, what kind of example are you setting for those who look up to you? As we examine these forces, authority, moral disengagement, dehumanization, and leadership, it's clear that the battle between good and evil is not just external. It's an internal struggle that each of us faces daily. But here's the empowering truth. Just as circumstances can lead people astray, they can also guide us toward extraordinary acts of kindness, courage, and integrity. The same mechanisms that create monsters can also create heroes. So, how do we ensure we stay on the path of good? How do we cultivate the strength to resist the pull of the Lucifer effect when it arises? The answers lie ahead. In the next section, we'll uncover practical strategies for recognizing and resisting the forces that lead to moral failure. These strategies have been tested by psychologists, spiritual leaders, and ordinary individuals who have faced extraordinary challenges. And remember, the final insight we'll explore is the most transformative of all, a realization that could change not only the way you see others, but also how you see yourself. To resist the forces that can lead us astray, we must first understand that awareness alone is not enough. While recognizing the psychological mechanisms of the Lucifer effect is a crucial step, we need actionable strategies to counteract their influence. Let's explore these strategies, beginning with the concept of moral courage. Moral courage is the ability to act ethically and stand up for what is right, even in the face of fear, opposition, or personal loss. It's what drives someone to speak out against injustice, to protect the vulnerable, or to admit a mistake when it would be easier to stay silent. But moral courage is not something we are born with. It's something we cultivate through deliberate practice and reflection. Think of historical figures like Rosa Parks, who refused to give up her seat on a bus, sparking a civil rights movement. Or consider whistleblowers who expose corruption and wrongdoing, often at great personal cost. These individuals were not immune to fear, but they chose to act despite it. So how can we develop moral courage in our own lives? Start by identifying your core values, the principles that matter most to you. These might include honesty, compassion, fairness, or accountability. Reflect on times when you faced a moral dilemma. Did you act in alignment with these values, or did you compromise them? One practical exercise is to imagine yourself in challenging scenarios. What would you do if you witnessed bullying at work? How would you respond if pressured to follow an unethical directive? By visualizing these situations and rehearsing your response, you strengthen your ability to act decisively when the moment arises. Another essential strategy is to build strong social connections with people who share your values. Surrounding yourself with supportive and principled individuals can act as a buffer against negative influences. These relationships provide a sense of accountability and encouragement, making it easier to resist the pressures of conformity and authority. But what about when we're confronted with systems or environments that seem designed to erode our morals? This is where the concept of situational awareness becomes vital. Situational awareness involves recognizing the subtle cues and dynamics that shape behavior. For example, pay attention to group norms, what is considered acceptable or expected in a given environment. If you notice patterns of exclusion, dishonesty, or harm, question them. Ask yourself, is this truly right, or have I simply accepted it because everyone else has? In addition, consider the role of small actions in creating change. Often, we feel powerless in the face of systemic issues, But even small acts of resistance can make a difference. Think of the ripple effect. How one person's decision to act with integrity can inspire others to do the same. For example, in the workplace, speaking up against unethical practices might seem risky, but it can encourage others to voice their concerns as well. Similarly, choosing kindness and understanding in everyday interactions can challenge the culture of dehumanization that often permeates society. Let's also address the critical importance of self-reflection. The philosopher Socrates famously said, "The unexamined life is not worth living." Self-reflection allows us to identify our biases, acknowledge our mistakes, and grow from them. It's not about perfection, but about progress, becoming a little better, a little more aware with each passing day. Make it a habit to regularly ask yourself questions like, what motivated my actions today? Did I treat others with respect and empathy? Were there moments when I stayed silent when I should have spoken up? By reflecting on these questions, you train yourself to act with greater intention and integrity. But what about the ultimate question? Can the Lucifer effect ever be completely neutralized? While the answer may depend on individual and societal factors, the key lies in fostering what psychologist Philip Zimbardo calls a heroic imagination. The heroic imagination is the mindset that allows ordinary people to take extraordinary actions in the face of moral challenges. It's the belief that you too can make a difference, that heroism is not reserved for the exceptional, but is accessible to all of us. To cultivate this mindset, start by looking for opportunities to practice small acts of heroism. These might include standing up for someone being treated unfairly, volunteering to help those in need, or simply choosing kindness over indifference in your daily interactions. It's also helpful to study the lives of those who have exemplified heroism. From historical figures to modern-day changemakers, their stories remind us that courage and compassion are within our reach. At this point, you might be wondering, what is the most powerful insight of all? What final realization can truly transform the way we see ourselves and the world? That answer lies in understanding the profound interconnectedness of humanity. The line between good and evil does not run between groups of people or nations. It runs through every human heart. As Alexander Solzhenitsyn once wrote, the battle line between good and evil runs through the heart of every man. This realization is both humbling and empowering. It reminds us that we are all capable of both harm and healing, but it also gives us the agency to choose. Every moment presents a new opportunity to act with integrity, to resist the pull of darkness, and to contribute to a world rooted in compassion and justice. Stay with me, because in the final part, we'll dive even deeper into how these ideas can be applied to your own life. Together, we'll uncover practical steps to not only resist the Lucifer effect, but to become a force for good in a world that desperately needs it. At this point, we've uncovered the psychological mechanisms that can turn good people toward darkness, authority, moral disengagement, dehumanization, and the influence of group dynamics. We've explored how awareness, moral courage, empathy, and self-reflection serve as defenses against these forces. Now let's focus on what you can do, starting today, to become not just resilient, but a source of light in challenging circumstances. The first step is to recognize your influence. No matter how small or insignificant your role may seem, you have the power to shape the environment around you. In every interaction, you contribute to the norms and values that guide others. Are you fostering a culture of kindness, fairness, and accountability, or are you silently allowing harmful behaviors to persist? Consider the story of someone who changed the course of history through seemingly small actions, Oskar Schindler, a German industrialist during the Second World War. While initially motivated by profit, Schindler used his resources to save the lives of over 1,000 Jewish people from the Holocaust. His story is a testament to how a single individual, even amidst one of history's darkest chapters, can make a profound difference. You don't need extraordinary circumstances to follow this example. You can start in your own community, workplace, or even within your family. Speak up when you see injustice. Offer support to someone who feels isolated. Challenge stereotypes and assumptions that divide people. These small acts, when multiplied, have the power to transform not only individual lives but entire communities. Another vital step is to educate yourself and others. Knowledge is one of the most effective tools against manipulation and moral erosion. Study history, psychology, and philosophy to deepen your understanding of how and why people make the choices they do. Share this knowledge with others, not to preach or lecture, but to spark meaningful conversations that inspire reflection and growth. For example, have you ever considered how much the stories we consume influence our thinking? Films, books, and media often shape our perceptions of good and evil, right and wrong. By seeking out narratives that challenge your assumptions and broaden your perspective, you build a more nuanced and compassionate understanding of the world. Let's also talk about resilience in the face of pressure. Standing up for what is right often comes with risks, social rejection, professional consequences, or even personal loss. This is why resilience is so crucial. Resilience doesn't mean being fearless. It means continuing to act in accordance with your values even when fear is present. To build resilience, focus on practices that strengthen your mental and emotional well-being. These might include mindfulness meditation, journaling, or seeking guidance from mentors and trusted friends. Surround yourself with a community of people who uplift and inspire you. Resilience is not something you build alone. It thrives in connection with others. But what happens when we fail? Because inevitably we will. There will be moments when fear or pressure gets the better of us, when we act in ways we later regret. This is where the concept of self-forgiveness becomes essential. Self-forgiveness is not about excusing harmful behavior, but about acknowledging your mistakes, taking responsibility, and committing to do better. It's about understanding that failure is part of the human experience, and that growth often comes from confronting our shortcomings. Reflect for a moment. Is there a time when you fell short of your own values? How did you respond to that failure? Did you learn from it, or did you let it define you? The ability to forgive yourself and others is one of the most powerful tools for breaking free from the cycles of harm perpetuated by the Lucifer effect. It allows you to move forward with clarity and purpose, rather than being weighed down by guilt or resentment. Finally, let's return to the most profound insight of all, the interconnectedness of humanity. When we recognize that the line between good and evil runs through every human heart, we begin to see others and ourselves with greater compassion. This understanding doesn't excuse harmful behavior, but it does allow us to approach the world with empathy and a commitment to healing rather than judgment. Think about the ripple effects of your actions. Every choice you make, no matter how small, sends waves out into the world. Will your actions contribute to division and harm, or will they bring people together and inspire hope? Imagine a world where each of us takes responsibility for our own choices, where we resist the forces that dehumanize and divide, and where we strive to create environments that nurture compassion and integrity. This is not an unattainable ideal. It's a reality we can build, one decision at a time. As we come to the end of this journey, let me leave you with one final challenge. Reflect on what you've learned today and ask yourself how you can apply it in your own life. How will you recognize and resist the forces that pull you away from your values? How will you contribute to a world where goodness prevails over darkness? The answers to these questions are not easy, but they are worth pursuing. Because in the end, the battle between good and evil is not fought on distant battlefields or in abstract theories. It's fought within each of us, every single day. So the next time you face a moral choice, remember this. You have the power to choose. You have the power to resist. And you have the power to be a force for good in a world that desperately needs it. The question is, will you rise to the challenge? Thanks for looking.